In a way, the everyday rhythms of life are always taken for granted until something goes wrong. And they usually go wrong when you're doing something very ordinary, and it's always very unexpected. And it upturns your very views of life. But actually, there are times when things go wrong, like the Bradford Fire, for example. The fire itself moved quicker than a human being could run. Within minutes, the entire stand was on fire, and it was fierce. At the time, I was working as a mental health social worker, and on the Monday after the fire, a group of us decided we needed to get together to see what we could do to help. When it came to selecting somebody to do the work, I put my name in the hat, and they gave me the job for 3 years to work with the survivors and the bereaved.
The thing that was absolutely innovative about the work that Michael did after the Bradford Fire was that it was outreach work. And what Michael did was to go out and visit people. It had never been done before. I became involved in the aftermath of the Zeebrugge disaster because I was well known in Kent for doing bereavement-related work in the health service, particularly working with people who were stuck. What I didn't really understand in 1987 was that trauma was going to be something different to bereavement. So in a sense, I learnt on the job, just as Michael learnt on the job after the Bradford Fire.
I think the most important moment for me in that was when I was listening to a woman describing the loss of her children. I remember saying to her, I said, "Now look, I really honestly have no idea what this is like for you. It hasn't happened to me. But I'll tell you this, listening to your story is very distressing for me." And that changed everything for her, because she was able to see that I wasn't pretending. I wasn't trying to be something that I couldn't be. And I think that was a big turning point for me. In all my work afterwards, I never felt I had to know what I couldn't know. But that did not mean I couldn't help. Peter and I were very chalk and very cheese. We were introduced to each other by Anna Ford on the set of a TV program, and that's how we met. And from then on, we became friends, but through work.
I mean, of course, the Bradford Fire was in 1985, and the Zeebrugge disaster was 1987. I invited Michael down to help us at the Herald Assistance Unit, and he was able to lead me into innovative ways of doing that.
And from then on, we became jointly involved in many other things, like Piper Alpha,
Clapham train crash, Lockerbie, the M1 air disaster,
Hillsborough. And so we were able to talk to each other about all these things. And then we began to actually do the work together within 2 years.
We had unique experience. Absolutely. There was nobody else in the country who had the level of experience that we had. In a sense, it put the concept of trauma on the map.
Well, we've been very good friends ever since, and still are. In many ways, quite miraculous that such a diverse pair should get together and work so well. And then within 3 years, I set up CCP, and he joined me.
One of the first things that Michael was involved with was training within local authorities, because, of course, the big disasters of the late 1980s and the early 90s had all been responded to by local authorities.
I knew I wanted to work with people and got a job within Birmingham in social services. Michael at the time had been advertising to local authorities about his course, Coping with a Catastrophe. I went on it and it changed my life because I met Michael, fell in love with a guy and thought after the week, this is what I want to do. This is my calling, to work much more in trauma aftercare and be more proactive in looking after people who've experienced traumatic situations.
I actually got made into an expert by the experience, to be honest, and I think that's what happened. And it happened the same for Peter. And together we worked very well in this regard.
Michael was often an ideas man, and because of the sort of human being I am, I was always the person who could put bones on the idea and flesh out a way in which a certain thing could be done.
And once you become good at it, you become known to be good at it, and then you become somebody they'll ring up. So then we were recruited by Barclays Bank to deal with bank raids, and at one point, less than a year after that, we were dealing with maybe 100 Barclays Bank raids a year.
Actually, the first incident I ever dealt with was the kidnapping of a family by a group of raiders come terrorists. Very unpleasant incident.
How do you stop people thinking about what they've experienced? It's there. It's an experience. You can't stop people thinking about it.
People have emotional reactions to trauma, they have thoughts about trauma, and they have behavioural reactions to trauma. And one of the big ones is avoiding. When we first began working with banks and building societies, after armed raids, people didn't want to go back and work on the till.
The thing about traumatic reactions is that they are normal, but the people who are having that reaction think it's very abnormal.
So they find themselves irritable, they find their concentration is affected, they find themselves jumpy to sudden noises, and they find themselves very vigilant all the time for other threat that may be around them.
And when we're working with people afterwards, we try to help them to recognize there is a kind of an expected level of anticipation of different things. So we create for them a kind of a landscape in which we can point out to them, well, here are the features that you will now probably encounter.
It's not about fixing people, it's about helping people to manage their reactions, to manage their thoughts, their feelings about that situation. And if they can manage those situations, then they can move through it and get to the point where thinking about what they've experienced is not causing the turmoil inside them anymore.
I've always worked on the principle of do less rather than more, but do the less well. People within the business would think it was going to be terribly complicated to help people, but it never was. It was about having the confidence to apply basic human skills, but within a model.
I think the beauty of CCP's work is that direct but proactive walking and talking therapy. This is not about being sat in a room and having therapy or counselling. This is walking, talking therapy.
And businesses soon began to understand that this process worked. Their staff got back to work quicker, they responded better within the business. Then we sort of enlarged the business and worked in a range of industrial settings. The model just proved good across industry. And then, of course, we became involved famously with the travel industry.
So we ended up traveling all over the world to deal with kidnappings, hostage-taking, rape, accidents, murder.
I met Michael around a week after I found out that my brother and his fiancée had died in a road traffic accident in South Africa. It was very obvious to me that Michael was going to be a huge help to me and my brother and my mum while we were there.
We were very competent at managing ourselves overseas, making sure that we weren't a burden to the people that we were there to help.
He was somebody who gave you the confidence to go on a journey of experiencing trauma, knowing that there was an end and a change to you, that you would still end up living a fruitful and fulfilling life. Little did I know at that point that it was creating an opportunity for me to become what I am now, which is carrying out the same role that Michael was providing for me.
The thing about trauma is you never stop learning, because they're different people all the time in a different situation. No trauma's the same. And that learning coming back into an organisation and being able to share that is invaluable and unique.
A lot of the cases that we work with are in the public eye. They're often reported in the news and the media and so on. An example is the Madeleine McCann case. We received the phone call the night that she disappeared, and the following morning I was on an aeroplane to Portugal. The case was unusual as well for us in that it brought the company and the business under quite a lot of media scrutiny. All of a sudden it was a case that generated interest in trauma, in missing people, and in how families were cared for in environments and following incidents like that.
For any of the incidents that we respond to, the common theme is people, and people affected by incidents that they didn't think was going to happen to them. And it could happen to any of us.
There's a need to have a really good understanding of what trauma is and what you can do to help people, but also what you can't do to help people. And I think over time we've learned that in a very deep way.
I think it's also based on the clinician being able to let go of their control. In other words, to allow the people who are suffering to take some charge, let them feel that they're not out of control and they're not just being needy, but they're contributing something.
I mean, there's always been two thrusts in CCP's work, one of which is to respond quickly after any incident and mitigate people developing unwanted reactions. But the other thrust for CCP has always been training, particularly when one is working in businesses.
And at Power Station, that was a situation where several guys got buried after an explosion of a big tower coming down. And they contacted CCP for some help. So one of the first bits of advice was, your organisation needs to contact the families direct, meet with the families. Of course, that was very frightening for them initially, because they thought they were going to be met with all this anger for their loved ones dying.
You can learn how to care for people. It's good to have that natural reservoir or deep wish to do so, but you can learn.
CCP's training, it would help people formulate some skills about how to respond, because that's generally what we're frightened of. We're frightened of handling people's distress.
We imagine how we would want our family to be treated. How would I want my mum to be spoken to in this situation? What would my children need? How would my brother or sister react in this situation? So we're always thinking about how we would want to be treated, rather than thinking about it from a corporate or PR perspective. It's what do we need from a human connection.
And then they would work more or less hand in glove with the service that we provided. There would be a dual process going on, proper support within the business, proper expert support from the outside.
It broke down lots of barriers. And over a short period of time, the families then were communicating with the organisation was communicating with the families. And that empathy and the way they worked together was much, much better. The communication then about how do we remember these colleagues that have died was all worked between the organisation and the families together. Didn't bring back lost colleagues, but at least it got communication going, and a lot of tears were shed both ways.
I was terribly proud that we developed something that was so successful, was so new, was so innovative. After 20 years of working at it, I realized probably that I couldn't develop it any further. And that's why it became very important with Anna and Alan and the new team that could take it forward and develop new things.
Given the legacy that Michael and Peter have handed down to Kevin and Anna and myself, we have an incredible knowledge base and experience which is derived from some of the most notable events in British history, certainly of the last 40 years.
So CCP offers 3 core services. We offer trauma care, which is the main bulk of what we do and has been from day one. We also provide an employee assistance programme, and this is an open access confidential helpline for employees of our customers. They might need support with a range of issues such as bereavement, stress, anxiety and relationship difficulties. And then the third main service that we offer is training, and that's so important for us because it offers the opportunity to really work in partnership with a company.
We're fortunate enough, I think, as a small business to be able to cherry pick qualified people with usually 5, 10, 15 years of practice in the field of trauma in one form or another, and happy to join a team which we believe to be one of the leading providers of these kind of services.
CCP's business model is quite unique in that we have a small team of people who are fully employed by CCP, and we don't use a network of associates. The reason we do it that way is because we can hand on heart guarantee the quality and the consistency of the clinical work by doing it that way. And I'm not prepared to put a consultant that I don't know looking after your people.
CCP continues to flourish because of the people within it that are committed to it and know, even in CCP, we start at home by looking after people and looking after people in the right kind of way. If you do that, not only do you prosper as a business, but you prosper as a group of people, you prosper as an individual. We're surrounded by people, and if we treat them in the right kind of way, they will make your life glow.
I am really proud of what my dad's created with this company. It's more than a company, it's a family. And I'm lucky that there was a sliding doors moment in my life when I'd finished my degree and came here for a couple of months, and 22 years later, still here and loving it as much as I did back then. And it's testament to what they set up 30 odd years ago, that so many of the values and so many of the services that we provide are just as effective now as they were back then. It's extraordinary.
My approach, even now in meeting people, is always to get the message across. How can I be of any help? Or what is going on with you that you think I can help you with? So I give them the opportunity to make that statement somehow and give them time to do it, because it's quite a big question to ask. I am very aware of the preciousness of life because I have seen so many people lose their lives and their capacities to live well through accidents and terrible things. And so personally, I value waking up every morning and having a breath in my body and getting on and doing ordinary things and appreciating them.
I have always enjoyed working at the edge of human experience. The sense of being able to help people cope with extreme experiences. And I think, in a sense, that summarizes much of what we achieved, which is making people who are fragmented by the experiences that they have inside themselves after trauma, making them feel whole again.